How to vinyl wrap the door on a Cadillac CT5 Blackwing using calendered film. We have Vinyl Frog's matte Kaitoke green. We start by measuring from the rear of the car and going a foot past the A-pillar so we have extra when it comes to wrapping panel by panel. Taking the bulk piece, we start with the rocker panel, then we move the material down, cutting section by section, giving ourselves 2 inches of leeway in both front and back of each panel, and this is why we left an extra foot in the beginning. Once the quarter panel is cut out, roll it up and set it aside for safekeeping. Then move the front and rear door piece back until there's 2 inches on the back side of the rear door. Give yourself another 2 inches on the front of the rear door, and this should leave the same amount for the front door as well. And one more time, that's why we cut an extra foot out of the bulk piece to begin with. Moving on to the preparation process, spray the whole panel with 70% isopropyl alcohol and then wipe it down. This is going to get any residues or waxes off. Next, using a clay bar, we spray the panel again for slip and then make a crosshatch pattern going up and down. This is going to get any bugs, sap, or tar off the car before installation. Finally, it's the fine tuning of the edges. Take a tucker and a rag for the hard to reach areas and make sure you thoroughly get the back side of the whole panel, as this is where your final bond is going to be. Another important step is to wipe the material down, both front and back, and then roll it up. This is going to reduce the likeliness of any dust or other contaminants getting under the film. Keeping direction in mind and making sure the logo is facing the same way as we go around the whole car ensures color is going to flow consistently over the whole thing. Now it's time to place the panel on the car using the Vinyl Frog magnets. Then we pull the liner off side by side without taking it all the way down. Start with the first side, gently place it down and secure it to the adjacent panel, in this case the rear door. Moving on to the other side, gently place it down once again, securing it to the fender. Next, we're going to pull it down without taking it all the way off and pull a tension line and then tack it down. This is going to give us the ability to work our way down and then up without overstretching, creating adhesive lines, or any other form of discoloration along the way. Once we finish laying down our tension line, we're going to go ahead and finish the top part first so no dust falls in from above due to gravity. You can see we lay the material softly as we squeegee to the edge. We're making sure we get all of the air out along the way, but we also don't want to overstretch the film, causing it to pull back over time. So this way, we lay it in with this technique so it's not overstretched by the time we get to the edge, although we will still heat at the end around the edge to shrink all potential stretch. Relief cuts are another important factor when wrapping. We're going to make one here so we can let the material lay back behind the fender without mashing it in and overstretching or discoloring it. You can see now it'll lay right back in behind the fender. We're going to move our way down to the second half of the door, under rolling the liner as we go and not doing too much at a time. Also not biting off per se too many wrinkles at once. So we're just going to squeegee about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch of wrinkles at once and go back and forth. Now, ideally, I actually would have gotten a little bit more cross pull originally when we took the liner off and stretched from side to side. It would have casted more of a U shape or more of a smiley face going down, and we'd be working from the center out. However, this is likely to happen, and it does happen, so you can see me fight through these wrinkles here in the middle because it's likely to happen to you, and it is manageable. Basically, again, we're going to work our way side to side without taking off too much and without getting ahead of ourselves. We're just going to go down in one even line. Going to make a relief cut at the edge here so the material doesn't have to overstretch as we work it. Continuing to not get ahead of ourselves, we lightly heat the material, being careful not to stretch it when it's warm, as this can immediately discolor it. So if you're going to heat to soften the film like this, do it from a distance, lightly, and make sure you let it cool. I'm going to blow on the film here and then give it another few seconds even to cool down before I start to squeegee it. And as we squeegee it, we're not pulling on the material at all. We're actually kind of laying it in as we squeegee our U shape that we'd want originally. This is the best squeegee technique, whether you're going down or up. It's basically a smiley face going down or a frowny face going up. We make another relief cut as we work our way down. Once again, being patient to not get ahead of ourselves, and we're reading the wrinkles as we just bite off a little bit at a time from a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch. Now, you'll notice when you heat this film, being a calendared film, it actually has pre-stretch from the manufacturing process, so whether you stretched it or not, it's still going to react to heat in the form of shrinking, which is actually nice because in this case, it bails us out of having a bunched up zone of wrinkles when we didn't have our original cross pull that would normally give it that stretch that would be shrunk out. In this case, it'll shrink whether you stretched it or not, based on its original manufacturer state. Patience is key as we work our way down, making sure we're not getting ahead of ourselves. When we do heat, once again, it's light, so we don't cause a stretch mark right here in the heated area. Continuing to work our way down evenly, taking off about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch at a time. And we're not pulling the material. You can see my other hand is actually feeding it in. This way it's got no stretch and the color is going to be full and not distorted whatsoever. Once again, taking advantage of that factory pre-stretch to get ourselves out of our wrinkle zone here. It basically bails us out without having stretched it to begin with. After we let it cool, we go ahead and continue to squeegee. Now again, patience is really the key when it comes to vinyl wrapping. If you try to rush the process, you're going to mess up in one way, whether you overstretch it and it pulls back over time, whether you discolor it, whether you let debris or dust under the film, which you will see, or whether you're making adhesive lines. There's a million ways to mess it up, so just take your time, heat it softly, let it cool is a big one, and then take your time to squeegee it. And once again, don't get ahead of yourself. You can see I'm just taking off a little bit at a time, and I'm not finishing left to right. I'm basically going center out the best I can all the way down. You're continuously shrinking it to make sure that one, it's not stretched, and two, to soften the material to enable you to squeegee it. But again, when it is warm, just make sure that you're not pulling and stretching it, as it will discolor the film and it's likely to pull back in the sun over time, as the material does have memory that's triggered by heat. So if it's stretched and the sun comes out, it's going to shrink back. So your best bet is to install it over the whole panel and then shrink the film at the end to make sure it's done, or ideally shrink the film along the way so you know it's not overstretched in any area. Moving on to the door handle recess, we heat the film to shrink and soften it, then blow on it so it cools. After cooling it, you take a wrap glove, work your way from left to right, and then if you have two gloves, it's actually best to send it with both fingers at the same time, whether it's two thumbs or two pointer fingers. This way, it's the most consistent way of laying it. It's not going to discolor or make adhesive lines in this scenario. Now, you can do it with one finger going back and forth. It's just critical to make sure the film is cool so you're not discoloring it or bunching up the adhesive in the form of an adhesive line underneath the film. Heating this area is important, as we did stretch the film as we laid it. So now that I've cut this hole, I'm going to hit it with heat again, allowing it to shrink before I make my final cut. This way we don't have to worry about it pulling back in the form of a failure over time in the heat. Now we're going to go ahead and pre-shrink all of our edges. This isn't the final time we're going to shrink it, but it does help to give it this little pre-shrink. Now, using my middle finger as a depth guide and my thumb as a pressure guide, I'm pushing against the rear door, which is on the opposite side of the front door, but I'm having depth control with my middle finger. Then we heat for our final time. This is going to allow the material to fully shrink back now that it's been cut and nothing's holding it back. Starting at the corners, we use our squeegee to work our way around before finishing the rest of the edges. Opening the door is going to enable us to fully shrink the material back before we work it around for our final cut. Since we're doing an exterior wrap, we've been doing bridge cuts, which is where you cut on the opposite panel before rolling it around the desired edge. In this case, it's about a 1/4 inch, so we're going to match that when we make our final cut on the bottom. Now, the main thing is that your lines are absolutely straight, and this is what separates a quality wrap from a non-quality wrap. Of course, not cutting through to the paint is another important step. Heating the edge at the end is important to make sure it's down and it's completely done shrinking. We're going to move back to the back edge of the front door, heating it one additional time just for good measure to make sure it is done, and then we're going to work our way all the way around. As we finish the front edge of this door, you'll see once again we're going to actually start at the corner, and this is so we cast wrinkles outward. It's easier to lose the wrinkles over a large period instead of running all of the wrinkles to the corner and then having to overstretch to get past them, which would of course pull back with heat and time. Starting from the corner and rolling our way out, we work up and down, making sure that we're not having any wrinkles on the body lines along the way. Now, sometimes we make bridge cuts and other times we score. You can see here I'm actually scoring the film. I'm not cutting through to the paint, although I am perforating the material on the top, allowing it to rip on the perfect line at the end. And here's our final product, Cadillac CT5 Blackwing, fully wrapped in Vinyl Frog's matte Kaitoke green. You can't beat this finish, and the look is absolutely custom, yet classy as well. Don't forget to subscribe for more. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.